All right, everybody. Well, welcome. Again, I'm so glad that you're here today. This is our panel for We Belong, the all-Black and queer sci-fi fantasy graphic novel anthology that we came together, and we were so excited to make this book happen. My name is Viktor Kerney. I am talking today, but I'm also part of this great team that really got this book out there and together. And so what we're going to do is, as we go through the presentation, I'm going to kind of go through the presentation, and then each person is going to talk about who they are. They're going to introduce themselves to you. They're going to also talk about their story and what inspired them to put this particular story in We Belong. So I'm going to play around with, I love Canva. Let's get over Canva. With this super color thing that I just fell in love with. It's me. So let's get started with the fact that, again, this is We Belong, to make sure everybody knows why you're here.
Real quick before we go forward, will this be available anywhere?
Yeah, I can send it out.
Yeah, I love what you've done so far. I would love to share that.
Yeah, I can send it out. Because, again, I love Canva. So again, this is our book. It's composed of 100 pages of sci-fi and fantasy stories that center queer Black perspective from all queer Black creatives. This cover is by Jay Hero. Now, if you don't know who Jay Hero is, Google, go on Instagram, go on Twitter, because this person is a very gifted artist. Right now, they have wonderful illustrations of Storm right now. So get into it, order it, all that great stuff. I wish Jay was here, but Jay did this wonderful cover for us. All right, William, we can start with you.
I'm William O. Tyler. I am the co-editor of We Belong along with Victor. We worked on putting the book together for Stack Deck Press. And that was a journey. Like we went through a lot finding creators. There were creators that we reached out to, and then we also had an open call for submissions because we wanted to make sure we got a good, diverse group of creators telling diverse stories. We're all queer and Black, but there's still lots of different levels and ways of telling stories and creating art within that. So we wanted to make sure that we had a good, combination, a good group of creators, which we do. We ended up with an awesome group. And I also did a story myself in the book called Soft Serve, which is about basically this idea of what if there was just unconditional love everywhere? How that would set up someone to go out into the world and be able to use that unconditional love as like a superpower when they go out into the world from their neighborhood. That's me.
Hi, my name is Ajuan Mance, and I'm very excited to be a part of this anthology. I'm an illustrator and a comic creator and an English professor. And my comic is called The Black Pride Cookout Hanky Code in Space. I was really excited to try to transfer some of the really cool things that happen around Black Pride into outer space and see what it would look like. And since food is the love language of the Black community, in a lot of context, I thought, what would a food hanky code look like? So that was my comment.
Tulani?
Hi, I'm Tulani. I am a cartoonist and illustrator, and my story is called Verdant, and I was inspired by fairy tales like Rapunzel to create a magical world. And it's a story about a witch, and also about finding love.
Sean wasn't able to make it with us. However, Sean is a very incredible artist, has been in the game for a very long time. And for those of you who are very familiar with queer art and comics, you have heard of Sean Z. So unfortunately he wasn't able to be here, but I just wanted to make sure that people saw his face and kind of see the wonderful art that he has made over the years. And he has a lot of things coming out very soon. So I wanted to recognize that today. Gaia.
Hi everyone, my name is Gaia WXYZ. I am a comics professor at UC Berkeley, the first ever in the art practice department. And I created a story for We Belong that I had actually pitched to the NIB and it was rejected in favor of a different story. But I liked this story so much that I really knew that I wanted to make it anyway. And so when William reached out to me being like, we're making an all-black sci-fi anthology, do you want to be a part of it? I was like, yes, I already have a story in mind. So in my story, without spoiling too much, I meet an alternate universe version of myself, in the universe that this version of me comes from is a little bit different than ours because they learn about the history of race as it intersects with science. And so that version of me continued on the scientific path because I actually wanted to study biology and I changed directions because I was like, wait, there's a lot of stuff we're not learning. Like I took Black feminist theory and I was like, I can't study science anymore. This is really bad. But there's a part of me that's like, what if, you know? And that's what I love about sci-fi is that it's all about what if. So the science version of me meets the artist version of me, and they're basically like, well, at least you don't actually have to research the inventions, you just get to make them up, you know? So that's my story.
Nice to meet you. So I'm Desmond Miller, and for my story, it's funny because I think how I've known William for a very long time, and it was at Comic-Con last year that I saw him when I was in a panel, and he was like, hey, we're doing this thing, do you want to be a part of it? And I was like, oh, yeah. And so it was just funny, like, to come full circle and be sitting here and, you know, working with them both. This has been a dream for me to do because I've always been writing a lot of stuff, but I've never really, you know, like a lot of stuff that I've written was not specifically, you know, queer Black. And so I really, you know, worked on what I wanted to do. And so my story is called The Love Supreme, and it's a short that I'm hoping to move into a much longer one about an Egyptian god who was resurrected, and he keeps being resurrected in order to, you know, stop the end of the world. And Bess is the person that always guides him through it every time. But every time he does it, Bess falls more and more in love with him. You know, it's harder and harder for him to let him go. So it's this generationalism that I wanted to explore in We Belong, with having an older, well, centuries older person with a younger person, you know, and see what that would be like as they try to stop the end of the world. So that's where mine came in. And for me, I've always been a writer, and this was the first time that I actually drew something myself, because I believe all comic writers want to draw every so often, so they dabble in it. But this is the first time I actually, you know, got my butt in gear and did it. And it was a lot of thanks to William, who really helped me with the page layouts and helped me really kind of find my voice. And Victor helped me, you know, find my voice as well when I was writing it. So yeah, I'm very happy that these two guys helmed it. So, but yeah, I'm really proud of my story and of the book in whole. I think this is this really earnest display of really, really talented creators. So, yeah, thanks.
Now, I'll show a little bit from the book, but I have to say, when y'all get a chance to look at this book, it is really amazing. The stories, the art, the different styles of art, the colors, the energy and the passion that is put into these stories. And one of the things that I really think is important is having these stories somewhere for not just for everybody to read, but to really, really inspire Black and queer creators to tell their own stories. And so I'd like to ask the panel, why do you think, and I think it's obvious, but why do you think that a book like We Belong is very important out here for our generation?
Are we gonna popcorn round?
Yeah, we can popcorn it. We could be crazy in the morning.
Anyone?
Oh, sure. I think it's important because, the future is, I will say that it's very likely that by the end of the 21st century, 1 in 3 people on the planet will be African. And yet, science fiction has not been inclusive in some ways, has given us demographics that are diametrically opposite, have made it really impossible to imagine Black futures. And yet, and at the same time, there are these forces in society that, in some ways, always have us kind of dwelling as Black people in the present, addressing one emergency after another, and so making the place to imagine, to play, to envision and fantasize. I think that books can play such an important role in doing that, and I think that graphic novels and comics can play such an important role in showing us what Black future, Black possibility, and Black playfulness looks like. And so I was so excited to be able to, it was just a process of playfulness, thought experiments, and so much joy in just being able to create my own comic. And I hope that transfers to other people who read this collection. That's my response.
Yeah, I love that you used the word joy, because I think joy really comes through in this book. There are a couple of heavier stories that have, not so happy endings, but, there are 2 ways to tell stories in fiction. You can do like a, hold up a mirror to the world and kind of show how it is and give commentary on it, and we have some of that, but then you can also show how you want the world to be, what you would like to see in the world, and we have a lot of that, and all of that is so joyous and so happy, and it just every time I skim through the book, I'm like, oh, this is just so great. I love all of these ideas coming out, and so a book like this is important to get those ideas out there.
Speaking as a teacher, I think that inspiring the next generation just by embodying creativity and just by doing the thing is one of the most important ways that we can sort of push the goalpost forward. I think about the Toni Morrison quote that racism is meant to distract us, right? So to have the privilege to put those distractions aside, if only for a moment, to create a story to share with the world, to say, look, this is what it could be like if people would just get their head out of their ass and really see us as humans. I think that We Belong was such a fitting title because I feel as though I've managed my comics career in spite of all of this internalized imposter syndrome and feelings like, oh, I'm not good enough, and then I see my art projected and I'm like, wait, I'm actually really good. And to pass that forward to my students by being like, hey, look, I was in an anthology and you can too, is like the best feeling ever.
Yeah, I want to speak definitely to that, about giving your own, helping people find their agency, and really showing that there's a place for this is really, really like the main thing, because I think because of just how entertainment proliferates and it's so widespread, that seeing people like you, doing things that you do, or things that you possibly, our children could do, yes we can, can do, I think it's very positive. Like it's just one of these things where it's always, it's kind of bittersweet, because sometimes I'm like, in one instance we shouldn't have to, but at the same time, now is the time that we need to. So I'm all for, We Belong, 2, 3, 4, 5, showcasing more Black queer creators and saying like, yes, we're here, we're part of the fandom, whether you like it or not, and we want a space at the table, and this is our way of doing that. And I think it's a very powerful message to think about it.
think this book is really important because of what everyone else was talking about, like feeling like we belong in the comics world and also being able to represent stories for younger people or anybody so they can feel represented. And I'm really glad I was able to be a part of this anthology.
Which kind of goes into, and I'm glad you kind of mentioned that, how we look at comics, because comics has become a place where we can tell our stories, but we feel a lot freer expressing ourselves. Why do you think web comics and comics has become that outlet for us to be seen and expressive and just out there?
Well, it's, oh, no, you go ahead.
Well, I just want to say because of the advent of the internet and webcomics in general, and I think people, because everyone is so very digitally inclined, because I did my whole story on Procreate, on my iPad, and even though there was a learning curve, I did a lot of it through YouTube, and just teaching myself and then talking to other of my friends who are artists and just watching videos. I mean, granted, I've always been studying art since I was a little kid, but actually sitting down and actually working towards something advanced my art a lot more. So I was like, oh my God, imagine that. If you actually work towards something, you can do it better. So that's why I think it's really prevalent, is because people see stuff like this and it's printed, and you tell them, oh yeah, you can do your own thing and put it on a website, just like, webcomics, webtoons, whatever, and it's like YouTube. And so I think a lot more people, especially the younger people, are really creating these stories and just putting them on webcomic because they don't have to wait anymore. Like the whole thing about waiting for a print book, waiting for this, but no, you can draw it, ink it, letter it yourself, and put it out there for people to see. So I think that's why we're seeing so many explorations of various different genres online. But again, that doesn't translate to actual physical paper media, because I was publishing my self-comics for a long time, and that's can get expensive. But the web just kind of like, everything's kind of even for, it's kind of even for a lot of people, and I think that's great. So I think that's why a lot of people are exploring it. And if you're curious, seriously, just type it out in your Google search and look for webcomics, and you'll see just like tons and tons of stuff. Just be careful what you search though. Some things are a bit risque. So if you're a kid, let your parents know.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of what you were saying about just the differences between web and print, because I thought that was very important in putting this book together, was that we brought in a lot of creators who had not been printed before, and give them an opportunity to explore what it's like being in print, and also give them that little mark on their resume as well. Because a lot of web comics are amazing, but a lot of industry people don't take it as seriously, which I think is awful. It's like gatekeeping, but I wanted to make sure that we had people who are being printed for the first time. We have a lot of veterans as well, like Ajuan, whose work has been amazing for as long as I've known you. But we have quite a few people who are being printed for the very first time where we belong, and that felt very special to me. And also, Desmond, you're doing art for the first time. We also have, we had another creator in the book who was an artist that was writing for the first time as well. So everyone getting to explore themselves and their own art that way was very important.
And I will say really quick, that was the beauty of this book, is the fact that people were allowed to just be themselves. They were able to really just get in there and tell their stories. And I sometimes think about some of the issues that we see in publishing and what they can and cannot do. And I was glad that we was able to gather the people that we gathered, but then allow them to really just let go, tell their stories, do it in whatever art they wanted to. They didn't have to be, like Jet Li. They just can tell a story. They can illustrate their story. It was just a really neat thing to see them. Yeah, can't talk about it. But to see it in the book was really amazing. Just to look at it and see the difference in the diversity.
And one theme that comes up a lot is, well, why not go into animation? You're so good at drawing. Why didn't you decide to become an animator? And it's like, well, I actually want to tell my whole stories, and I don't want to just be part of a team that's has an executive producer deciding what happens in my story, right? Like, I want creative control. And to all young creators out there, like, don't box yourself in and feel like you have to make comics because it's the one medium that you can sort of do everything with. But just keep that in mind. If you are somebody who's really passionate about telling stories, animation requires a lot of budget, a lot of teams, and a lot of people. And so the larger a project is, the more likely it is to be sort of like censored or like hemmed in by the needs of your employer. Whereas with comics, you're like, I'm gonna make my weird, wacky webcomic, and then all of a sudden it's got 1 million viewers, right? Like, it's a totally different trajectory. And I think that that's what makes comics as a medium specifically so unique.
Yeah, and it's great that with comics, like you were talking about, you don't have that big budget. You can just sit at home and draw on your couch and make your comic. You don't have to, set up this long process. Like, animation is amazing, but it is time consuming and takes a lot of work and a lot of money, like you were saying. And you just do whatever medium you want. You can use all types of do your comics in any type of medium, just sitting at home, whether it's digital, whether it's traditional art. It's a lot easier.
All right, so as we kind of understand it again, we enjoy the medium of the web, writing our comics, creating our own comics. We also would love to maybe enter the world of publishing, but it's sometimes for that publishing is still in 1981 when it comes to telling our stories and allowing us to do that. Why do you think that publishing is just so behind, especially when it comes to fantasy and sci-fi? Why are they so behind in getting our stories out?
Well, I think that's a really good question. And things are changing, but it always takes that one person to make clear to people that it is profitable to tell stories of people who are people of color and queer people and trans and non-binary folks. And I think that's really the main reason. And also change happens very slowly, and so there can be a real breakout star. I mean, in some ways, Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon is science fiction, but there was kind of a deliberate way of not reading it as such for decades. And so, people don't necessarily recognize how much the audience has changed. And so it's kind of work that we're doing with our audience, I almost feel, and showing that we are creators, but there are a lot of readers who are like us or who want to hear our stories. And so it takes this kind of concerted effort displaying our capacity to produce, but also audiences showing demand. And there's a high bar to making that visible because people also have to be trained to want to see it, to see that demand and the capacity for supply. It's challenging, it's insidious, and people see what they've been trained to see. So we're pushing back against that.
The mainstream will always be the last to get the cool stuff. the cool stuff is really being created in the margins in the independent sector. And then once the mainstream sees that, oh, there are people into this, or I can make money off of this, because that's what the corporate's bottom line is, that's when they'll jump on board. So to see the really cool stuff, look in the margins for sure.
I would also kind of throw in there, there's a part of me that's always been afraid of major publishing, especially, I'll give an example without throwing names, but just kind of noticing like how certain Black books are being published, being put out there, and sometimes you're wondering, who was behind this? What is the message? Especially when you look at the editing and you look at what a lack of editing and the lack of support that black book group gets compared to maybe fantasy, other white fantasy people who get everything they need to be successful. It makes me a little scared at times to really trust publishing that will do right by us, and do y'all kind of feel that sometimes publishing is just out to make sure they say we got a black queer person, that box is shut off right here. Y'all feel like they are very supportive still, or they're just trying to check that box? This is just a side question.
I personally think that they, I think you're probably right to a certain degree that a lot of it is kind of like optics. But the problem with that's really kind of sad is like once you get that one black face that sells, you're not going for any more. You know, they're probably not going to look for any more because they have that one that kind of tells it. And so that's what I've always kind of, worried about. And a lot of times in my earlier work, while it was still a lot of it, came into its black centric. A lot of it dealt with a lot of safer topics, that I think would be a lot more like wider appeal, but I was quote unquote never chosen, to be that person in comics. And I did that for quite a while until I started self-publishing my own stuff. And I was just like, you know what? Self-publishing is a lot easier to go now, and I was always lucky because I've always had a pretty good income. So I could keep a little chump change aside, not chump change, but those just something on the side to sell my, to print my books. But I think that's speaking specifically about like the industry. I think that's what it really is they're not willing to take a chance anymore like they used to be. And so if you get one person that you take a chance on and they don't sell, they're like, I don't want that money, and they don't want to have to put that on their books. So I just think they're very safe. I think that goes for any kind of popular media. That's why we get so many sequels and remakes, is because it's safe and they know. That's why Rob Downey Jr.'s do. So it's like fun. It's safe. So that's how I believe it. It's very much like, they got the one, they sell well, that's it. We're not going to try to shake anything up. And that's bad.
I think a lot about I think a lot about the history of how Black people have used creativity as a method of resistance, and how that kind of runs directly against a lot of what the market forces want, which is just like profit, right? So if we're operating outside of like what they have delineated as like, this is the Black mode of creation, urban stories, and things like that, like coded language,
anger,
Yeah. We want how many television series do there need to be about young Black men selling drugs in the 70s? Like, there's so many of them. And so that to me is why We Belong is so important, because it's showing like sci-fi and fantasy unfortunately does get sort of seen as a fringe genre, like even without the racialization of making Black stories, right? So to make Black sci-fi and Black fantasy, I don't actually participate in mainstream that much. Like I've worked for indie publishers and now I'm in education, but I just noticed that it seems like they really don't want to take a chance of like combining too many fringe things into one, because they're like, only one person is gonna watch this like Black magical girl story. It's like, that's so not true. Like, we need Afro Sailor Moon yesterday. There totally is a market for that stuff, and it's not just other people of color who want to watch it. I mean, look at our audience,
Yeah, speaking about the mixing of fringes, I mean, that's basically how this whole book was really Victor's baby. Victor wanted to do a anthology that was queer and Black, because this is how he brought it to me when he pitched it to me to come on board. He was like, we have queer anthologies with not a lot of Blackness. We have Black anthologies with not a lot of queerness. So it's time for us to do something that is both. Because a lot of times as queer Black people, we almost have to set one aside in order to communicate with the other group. And it's, kind of upsetting and frustrating having to do that and not be your whole self all the time. But this book, we made sure that this was a place for all of it to go.
Yeah, thank you, Wayne. And that was, again, when I think about it, I think about one of the reasons that really just pushed me to do this is because the fact that, we see a lot of queer books, it's a lot of the same people, no shade to them, but it's always kind of the same people. And I'm like, okay, I see y'all, you told me this story last year, blah, blah, blah. But there's so many Black and queer creators and artists and writers that we just don't see enough of. And I got tired of seeing that one. That one that just got lucky, got picked up in their white arms and put in this book. I was just sick of that, and I'm sick of that system. And so I felt like, no, this is kind of there's kids in here, F you, to that system of like, well, here's our special queers that we really focus on. I wanted people to see there are others. And there are very talented, more talented than some of the ones that are out there now. And then again, no shade to them, but I wanted to make sure again, you see us and you know who we are. If you never see us again, you will see our names, you will see our cards, and you'll read our stories. And that's one of the things I want. If I die right now, that is something I'll be happy to know, that you will always know who these people are. You will always know who these people are.
Thank you for that.
So what keeps y'all inspired in this world of foolishness? People letting us down in so many different ways, the country, the world. What keeps y'all inspired to keep putting art out?
Well, at this point, it's what Gaia already mentioned, is art as resistance for me. As resistance and also as a way to figure out my own emotions as a catharsis. Because a lot of the stuff that I'm creating now is basically just me figuring out how I really feel about things and putting that into the comic. Yeah.
And I can say, what keeps me inspired partly is the past and partly is the future. When I think about how many Black writers we aren't taught in school were doing activist, transformative, transgressive work, using their art to change the world 150 years ago, when Black people officially couldn't read or write. They were doing amazing stuff, and as an adult, I've learned about some of these folks, and they just taught me, wow, if they can do it, I can do it. History in some ways is permission. But I also, like Gaia, I'm in higher ed and I teach, and Black futures keep me inspired. When I encounter my students of color, my Black students, but students of all ethnicities, and look at their talent and their insightfulness, and I just think, wow, if I had been that insightful when I was a sophomore in college and this level of talent, that just makes me feel so hopeful. And when I turn off the news and actually focus on what's around me and what people are producing and how they're thinking, it just lets me know there are some amazing things ahead. And I want to create work that kind of imagines what that might look like, and also create work that helps to usher in those amazing futures that we have ahead of us.
I just want to mention, since you were talking about having these, ancestors that come before us, doing all of this good work that we never really learn about or missed for a long time. One of the greatest privileges I had putting together We Belong was getting to communicate with Rupert Kerney, who's like a legendary queer Black comic strip cartoonist. And I was able to meet with him and put together a collection of some of his work to include in We Belong, because he really paved the way as far as queer Black comics. Or one of the people, there were more, of course, but he was really one of the important people that a lot of people don't know of today. And I'm happy to say that out of curating those short comic strips for We Belong, Rupert and I are now working on a definitive collection of his whole book. So that, and this previous comics has been out of print since, I want to say, the 80s. So we're currently working on, with Stack Deck Press, who also put out We Belong, the definitive collection of Rupert's work, and I'm very excited for that to come out soon.
And I think about that in that parallel universe story that I wrote for We Belong. Like, I didn't learn about Rupert Kerney until I was in grad school, and I've loved comics since I was a little kid. You know, what if I had learned about Shirley Chisholm when I was in elementary school instead of undergrad? Like, there's all of these bits and pieces of knowledge that I've been able to accumulate throughout the course of my life. And what keeps me inspired is knowing that I am a repository of that knowledge, that I get to go spread that with the world. And so I almost feel like I'm operating more out of a sense of duty these days than out of like a sense of, oh, I'm just so inspired. It's like, no, I made it this far. I ain't dead yet. Okay, I gotta go put the thing out in the world now. Okay, you know, like I really feel like I'm on a mission.
Well, we're getting close to the end, so I just wanted to know if people wanted to share what are you working on and what can we look forward to see.
Well, I since I was just talking about the Rupert Kerney book, I've been working on that as an editor, and I have postcards if you want more information. The Kickstarter is going to be starting soon. And in addition to that, the other comics that I'm working on, I have a self-publishing company called Tannis Comix with my partner Dave Davenport, and we're putting out lots of queer horror books. His last book, Feral and the Ghost Skater, just had a successful Kickstarter as well, and is available now on the Tannis website. And I am drawing 2 comics at the moment. We'll see which one gets finished first. But one is Anxious Axe, which is about this black queer guy named Axe who just has all of this anxiety. I mean, he's basically me. And his anxiety develops into a monster that hangs off of his shoulder and whispers in his ear. So it's a horror comic in that regard. And then the other comic that I'm working on is called Siren-O, which is about a modern day siren who's a sex worker. So.
Should we just go down the line?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So, as a teacher, I'm very excited that last semester I actually put together a printed anthology of my students' work for their midterm. They collaborated and each made 6-page comics, or 8-page comics. And because UC Berkeley does not give me a big budget, I actually sat there and printed this out myself on our classroom printer. So I don't have copies to sell, but if you want to check it out, you can come see me after class. And then I also have some stickers. This is like an envy sticker sheet that I made, and I have other stickers too, so please inquire. I've been working on the same world building project for about 12 or 15 years now, and I hope that it gets published one day. It's called Supercluster, inspired by people like Octavia Butler, looking forward into the future. How do people survive? How do they thrive? It follows a throuple that lives in the future. I don't know, I'm poly, and I just don't see enough positive poly representation in the world, so that's one thing that I'm interested in. And another project that I just started with my younger brother, inspired by both of our experiences with incarceration, is called Escape from Astral Jail. So it's a sci-fi story that's inspired by both of our experiences with incarceration.
Right now, I'm working on a queer high school romance webcomic called Not Equipped for This, and it's going to explore themes of gender and sexuality and first love. And I also am working on like mini comics and zines for Portland Zine Symposium, and yeah.
I'm working on turning, so what I'm doing as an artist, I'm hoping to work on turning A Love Supreme into a webcomic to continue on the story that was in this book. So please stay tuned for that. I'm also working on another book called The Magi, which is, so I love cats. Like, I love cats like a lot. And so this one is like a magical tale about so in British slang, Magi means unremarkable person. That's what a Magi is. And so in this world, the Magi is this young black kid who finds a cat, and so they're catmancers basically, and so their foci is their cat, and so there's all these different kingdoms that have different types of cats, and you bond with the cat, and we can go to this magical school and learn how to be this kind of elite catmancer. And Magis usually don't go there because they're unremarkable. But he meets a bobtailed black cat, and together they might be Magi. So basically, they're unremarkable. They're unremarkable pair who do remarkable things. So it's about them going off and doing remarkable things with their friends. It's a little bit Naruto, a little bit manga, and it's a little bit magic, love magic. So it's a lot cat. So if you like cats, cat-based creatures. I'm working on it right now, hoping to get it out relatively soon. And then the last thing is I'm working with Stack Deck Press. I'm going to be submitted to be a part of their new sports anthology. And a friend of mine is helping me doing a baseball story about a poly couple trying to convince their third to vote to be a part of one of because they're opposing teams. One is the Braves and one is the San Francisco Giants. I'm from the Bay. Yeah, you have to read the story to see what the third chooses. So that's what I'm doing.
Not the Dodgers.
Not
the Dodgers.
Wait and see.
I have, it's been a really great last 12 months. I don't know why I didn't bring a copy, but I released a children's book from Chronicle Books called What Do Brothers Do All Day? If you like art and you're an adult, or if you have kids in your life in some way, shape, or form, What Do Brothers Do All Day is awesome and beautiful, and I'm very proud of it. And in March, I released a collection of comics called Gender Studies, which is available down at 2144, the Prism Comics booth. And is my book Living Wild Black, which is a joyful illustrations and difficult definitions of various legal things for which Black people have been incarcerated, killed, or harassed. In terms of current projects, I've written a proposal for a collection of short stories, comic short stories that combine folklore, family life, and futurism, Afrofuturism, and also a graphic autobiography that is humorous because my life is kind of funny and nerdy, and so keep your eye out. AjuanMance.com is where you can get some updates as things hopefully come under contract. So we'll see.
I am working on, I actually wrote it already. I wrote a YA novel about a Black queer kid learning that he comes from a magical family, but also trying to survive from a dark coven that's trying to kill them all. I've also turned it into a graphic novel, so that was written for that. I try to stay away from the tropes of YA novels. If you are familiar with YA novels, somebody's mom's dead, somebody's always downtrodden when they're living at the bottom of this stage or something like that. I try to create the Black character to actually have a normal, fun life in Long Beach until one day he has, a dark warlock and a couple of cameos trying to kill him. So we start there, and there's a little bit of romance with, another warlock who's trying to help him understand his power. So that has been fun to write. And then the art will come with that soon, but I'm really excited to put that out there. Trying to stay away from tropes, trying to change how we see Black young characters in YA novels, but also in comics as well. So I'm really excited for that. It is called Sons of Midnight and Shade, and I'm really excited to work on that and get that out there to the public. All right, we have a little bit of time for questions, but I do want to say that Ajuan and Desmond will be downstairs at the Prism booth to sign We Belong. If you want to get a signed copy, we'll be down there as well. So if you haven't got your copy of We Belong and you want it, I know you do. We have plenty of copies. We've sold copies a lot this weekend, but you need to come on down there and get it at the Prism booth. I think it's 2144 in that area. You can't miss us. So come down there, pick up a book, meet us. But yeah, that's my big plug. But if you have any questions, feel free to come to the mic. Don't be afraid of the mic. And ask a question or two.
Is this Brandy's house?
Yes.
Okay, just, okay.
$20 for me.
You know what?
Because I'll take this.
Never know.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
You can tilt it. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, there we go. Okay, great. My name is Brandy. I'm a PhD student in the Bay Area, and my research is around Black nerds, Afrofuturism, and science, really about how people deviate from science and why. And I'm really interested because a lot of my focus is going to be around world building and sci-fi. And oftentimes in this like research sector, when we research about Black folks, it's like Black folks are a monolith, and Black folks are viewed as like we oftentimes gender and sexuality are ignored. So I want to know, how do you sort of engage with sci-fi and fantasy in your own time, whether it's through art or like drawing, or like what do you do for fun in the sci-fi realm? So I'm like using you to also get some ideas on how I can reach out to folks and uplift queer voices.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer. Also, very nice to meet you. I have been a lifelong sci-fi fan. I'm very lucky to have a Black nerd for a father. Like, our Christmas tree was decked out in all of the Hallmark Star Wars and Star Trek ships. You know, like, he collected them every year for like years and years. So I'm like a third generation Black nerd. So I feel like it's just in my blood, you know what I mean? So I'm like always watching stuff, what's that new animated one that came out? Oh God, it's escaping me. It's on Netflix. Oh gosh, it's so good.
Supercell?
Yeah, no, not Supercell, it's animated.
Oh.
Scavenger's Reign?
Scavenger's Reign, yeah, like I've been getting into Scavenger's Reign, I've been getting into, John Jennings, if you aren't already familiar, you already know him. Yeah, he's the reason why I went to the MFA in comics program, actually. So his influence on me, like getting to see him do the Octavia Butler graphic novel adaptations, like it's just like a constant intake, sort of. And then as far as the world building goes, it's just a hobby of mine that I hope to take to a professional level soon. But as you know, being an independent Black creator means that you're operating on a kind of different time schedule, because it's like, oh God, rent's due again? You know, like, it makes it hard to think in the long term, which is why I think that there isn't as many Black created world building projects, but that we gotta keep the faith and know that they will come out. Yeah. Anything else you want to answer?
I'm a cinephile. I'm constantly watching movies. Like every day I watch at least one movie. At least, sometimes more. Very often genre sci-fi stuff. I love dramas as well, but it's always, I find that I really love, as far as world building as well, I really love things that show contrasting complexities. And maybe that comes from being Black and queer, but I love when two truths can be true at once. So anything like that, like I love, it's a really weird thing to describe, but I love things that are campy yet grounded. So something like The Wiz, where it's like rooted in something real, but it's over the top. That's the kind of world building I really, really fall in love with.
Thank you.
Ready next.
Sorry to sound rude, or seem rude with being on my phone the whole time. I was taking notes. So my question is, what do you think about a science fiction world where LGBTQ stuff like being gay, hey bi, hey ace, and so on matters to pretty much no one except for potential spouses? Like, it is so thoroughly normalized that no one else really cares.
yeah. That would be great, you know. Yeah, I think once people stop othering, you know, just in general, and actually fully accept the fact that we're all in this together and no one's making it out alive, I think a lot of things will generally get better, you know. But as long as, and this is a much more macro, you know, higher ideal. But yeah, I would love for all of this to happen, and I think that's one of the things. Real quick, I'll be quick. It's one of the things that's so funny about YA and sci-fi and fantasy that I find kind of difficult is the dystopian genre, because my God, not everything has to be sad. You know, we can have other types of turmoil for people that doesn't have to, you know, begin with dystopians or, you know, people, aliens killing us all, or zombies, or you know, robots. It's like, come on, there's other things we can do with the utopian society. That's not corny, you know. And it's funny because I like Star Trek, and they kind of presented it as a utopian world for a long time, you know, but you never got to see what's happening on Earth because it was always out in space, you know. So I would love to have a utopian story about, you know, about just living in your life. You know, I don't think that'd be boring at all.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, continue.
I love that you brought up Star Trek just because that's exactly where my mind went when I read the question. This progressive socialist future where, you know, those on the ship don't really have conflict with each other.
Yeah.
The conflict comes from when they're meeting people of other worlds and trying to figure out how to work together. But the future of humanity that it shows is very much like, right now in our world, identity politics are very important because we're trying to be heard. But in that future, identity politics aren't important because everyone is there already.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I got from your question.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
We have time for one more question.
Hi, my name is Amir. I'm a robotics engineering and critical race and ethnic studies student at UC Santa Cruz. And I wanted to ask our academics, how do you balance being a creative and being in academia, and just like the balance between having to keep a job so you can keep being creative, but having enough time to be creative and not burning out?
I'm crying.
I'll be as succinct as possible, which is to say that, you know, like a lot of people, I've been drawing my entire life. It's been the main thing that I did when I was awake and not doing homework. But when I became a professor, I stopped. When I went to grad school for literature, I stopped drawing, except for a little freelance stuff. After 1 year of being a professor, I turned in my grades and drove directly to the art supply store, because what I realized is my art practice and my scholarly practice had to coexist. There were stories and questions about Black people that I could not answer during scholarship, and I needed art to be able to pursue those. And so the two things kind of fed each other. I'm now a professor of illustration, and I also teach in the comics program, which I love. But I wouldn't be making the work that I made if I hadn't been an English professor for 29 years. And so the two things really have fed each other, and I haven't slept nearly as much as I should have over the last 30 years. So it is difficult. They feed each other, but I'm still figuring out how to maintain my, you know, how to care for me. You know, so yeah, it's tough.
I'm still at the bottom. I'm an adjunct. I called myself a professor because it sounds cool, but I'm not actually a professor. I get paid by the class, I get paid by the unit, and like, it's just really rough. But I also worked as a cannabis dispensary worker for many years and was just feeling like my life had no meaning, really. I mean, like, I was helping people because it was a medical industry, right? But I didn't feel like my higher purpose was being fed. So at the end of the day, I actually was in a combined degree program for my undergrad where I was in art school and academic school. I was doing I just do too much, like that's the thing for Black femmes. Like we're always expected to do everything, clean up all the messes and then also come up with all the new ideas too. So studying Black feminism and the history and like learning, like what time did Toni Morrison wake up in the morning to start writing? 4:30? Oh my God, like it's important to see what people before us were doing, like bringing in the ancestors, not only for inspiration, but for practical advice, like how do I carve out that time? Everybody's schedule is going to look different based on their needs, but I do think that there is a certain amount of self-discipline that is required to do this work, because nobody's going to come up to you and be like, I still haven't seen Supercluster, where's that story? I need to be that person for myself. So at the end of the day, this is a decision that we make all the time, and I go long periods of time without feeling like I'm doing enough, and then I realize, oh, it's because I needed to rest, right? But coming to something like Comic-Con, now I'm like charged up. I'm like, I need my book for next year, So like letting the cycle happen and not getting too down on yourself when you're having a low moment, because you know that you're gonna come back up and pick yourself back up later.
Oh, great cosplay, by the way.
All right, y'all. Well, that is it for us. But thank y'all for coming to this session.